It's been a while since I did a video on something so specific, but this is where I live, these kinds of little details. Obviously, broad strokes are the more important things to understand immediately, but once you get past that, and you are playing opponents of similar skill level who also understand this, that's when these little things start coming into play more. And it can often be the difference between a win in a single battle or winning more consistently over a longer period of time, which is what being skilled is all about. So, to not just do it once, doing it when it matters, obviously, but to also be able to do it repeatedly to prove that you really know how to do it. Anyway, the the subject for that little thesis going on here is not just Choice Band Tyranitar, but the last moves on it. Now, CB Tyranitar is itself a massively underrated threat, and pound for pound, it is the most dangerous T-Tar just because it can do such insane damage to everything. Like even something that has great coverage, like various mixed tars, they're always going to be losing out on something. And there are some things that they're just not going to be able to break through sheer power alone. CB Tar does not have that issue. And there are other details like how fast you should run it and the bulk, but overall that is not really team dependent, first of all, but also not really as important, I think, on a game-to-game basis as the moveset. The thing is, the moveset never has to change if you don't want to. The standard CB Tar is, in addition to the obvious Quake Slide, Focus Punch and HP Bug. Anything more, you don't need it. I also do think that CB Tar should generally be pretty speedy. I don't think it gets a ton out of its bulk. There are certain situations, but the more opportunities you have. I don't believe in Jolly CB Tar, though. People who run Jolly Brick Break CB Tar lead just to get the advantage on other T-Tars, missing the forest for the trees massively. That is not a consistent strategy at all. So, I do believe in Adamant CB Tar. But the moves there, Brick Break was mentioned. You're like, wait, Brick Break isn't part of the standard CB Tar moveset? No, it is not, and that is one of the other moves that we're going to be discussing today. So, depending on what you think is most important, then you could say this is about the last move on CB Tar, but I tend to think since it is more team dependent, then you could justify dropping either Focus Punch or HP Bug. I don't think it's always one or the other. Opinions vary, obviously, and this is just me. And you are free to think I am as correct or wildly out of my depth as you do. But I've played around with this a lot, and I do have some opinions I'm going to tell you about and why I have them. So, the other moves besides Focus Punch and HP Bug competing for that slot are going to be Brick Break, as mentioned, and Double Edge. I don't think there's really anything else you would want to consider. I'm sure some goofball out there is like, LOL, what about Ancient Power? But no. I guess you could make a case for Return over Double Edge, but, No, I don't think so. And I don't think there's any special moves you want to run, or Toxic or whatever. Like, some C-Beers can run Toxic, like Flygon, but no. So, Focus Punch, HP Bug, those are the standards. You can never go wrong with them. However, if you are getting to this point where you are, optimizing your optimizations, as far as possible, just really pushing it, stretching it as far as it can go, then you do want to consider these moves. So, Focus Punch's biggest pro is that you absolutely wallop Swampert. Offensive Pert is just almost KO'd, pretty much. And even, bulkier offensive Swamperts, they're still not going to like it at all. And even the bulkiest Swampert out there is taking absolutely immense damage, well over half. And that is instantly a lot of progress. Now, it obviously requires some very deft team building, so that, because Swampert is going to force you out, there's lefties, and then you don't want it protecting afterwards. Or it gets lefties after the Focus Punch, and then it forces you out, so there's another round of lefties, and you don't want it healing back that full 18%. If you can punish it for, protecting, then That's a real plus. One example of this might be if you go to a Calm Mind Celebi and the Swampert's not going to want to protect on it because, oh, I just gave that Celebi a Calm Mind for no reason. So, and yeah, Celebi can also beat P out of something like Blissey to give CB Tar switch-ins. So that's just one example, of course. There's plenty of others out there. But that's the general idea. As long as, spikes also go a long way in offsetting that leftovers recovery. CB Tar does not require spikes. And matter of fact, there was quite a long period of time where these sand offenses with CB Tar and CB Arrow and no spikes were very popular in high-level tournament play. Those have gone out of fashion a little. I still think they're very viable. The biggest issue they're going to have is Will-O-Wisp Gengar, because that's going to be annoying. But hey, again, that's what Celebi is for. So I hope they make some sort of a comeback. Or, like Lum, Psychic Pursuit, Metagross, or something kooky like that. Anyway. So, yeah, that's what Focus Punch is doing. And it also thrashes Skarmory for similar damage. Obviously, Spikes doesn't do anything against Skarm, but, to get that sort of instant damage on it is just absolutely enormous. And, yeah, it's just, even something like Suicune or Milotic, you are just really, really punishing for huge damage. Defensive Flygon, pound for pound, one of the best T-Tar answers, if it's not running Ice Beam. And even that is going to really struggle under the weight of a full-powered Focus Punch. And even stuff like, I don't know, like Steelix is going to get walloped. But, even something like a Metagross switch is going to take heavy, heavy damage. T-Tar already likes launching Focus Punches quite a bit from just a standard physical attacking set. And it likes doing that even without the CB. And it already is dishing out major damage. So obviously you put the +1 attack on it, and it's not the same Pokemon. It doesn't occupy that same defensive utility without that bulk and leftovers. But, the offensive upside is going to be really big to help you clean up with something like a DD Mence or something. So, that's Focus Punch. It's a pretty safe move to click against Blissey because Fighting Resists generally don't switch into T-Tar. Because you look at Fighting Resists and it's things like Gengar and Flying types. It's like, those things that really hate Rock Slide. So that's why Focus Punch is generally safe. And or something like Celebi. You don't want to switch Celebi into T-Tar either. The only Fighting Resist that really likes switching into T-Tar at all is Claydol, which is A, not an immediate threat, B, still takes a pretty hefty chunk from Focus Punch, and C is also why you run HP Bug. So that's Focus Punch. HP Bug, obvious. That OHKO on Celebi is just gorgeous, and hitting something like Claydol for major damage is really big as well. Now here's where it gets interesting. With the right teammates, you can potentially justify, dropping either of them. Now, I don't know how good you'd have to be against Celebi to qualify, because Celebi is a major pain, and Claydol for that matter. So dropping HP Bug, it's not something I would be super keen on doing, at least regularly, but it is something to consider, because if you can cover them, then you can get either Brick Break or Double Edge. We'll get into the pros of those. But yeah, those are what you have to cover. And with Focus Punch, then we already mentioned how Spikes is really nice with CB Tar. So that might make you more comfortable against Swampert. And, I mean, the Flygon issue is still very much there, so you'd have to have some sort of plan for it. But because it's, Spikes immune, of course. But against something like Skarmory, I mean, you like Rock Sliding Skarmory anyway, and you get to pepper Swampert with CB Rock Slides plus Spikes. It doesn't heal those off nearly as well. So it makes your main move very spammable. So there's that. And also, if you have a Magneton, then I think you can justify dropping Focus Punch a little more. McMegan used to... I'm not 100% sure on this, though, because you also really like Focus Punch for something like a Resting Snorlax. So take that one with a grain of salt. But to me, one of Focus Punch's biggest pluses is that you really crush Skarmory and Swampert in the same move, which no other move really does. Except for maybe Brick Break, but we're getting there. And that makes it a very safe click to ensure a lot of progress early on. That's why it was so popular for such a time. It was letting these offensive teams, bust through your standard Skarm Bliss compositions, very safely. Zap those BPs out of Bliss, you launch the Focus Punch, boom, you've already gotten a lot done. keep the pressure going, and CB Tar will do it again and again and again. And even if it winds up getting Doug Trio'd, then it will have left a lot in its wake. Spikes are also very good with CB Tar because Doug Trio lives even a CB rock slide, but spikes come up and that's no longer an issue. So yeah, CB Tar used to have this reputation as, oh, you use it for a lot of power without needing spikes, but when you have it alongside spikes, it's just absolutely nuts. M Dragon was a big fan of spikes, CB Tar, CB Arrow. He was very consistent with that kind of team. So, but yeah, if you have Magneton, then on McMegan's old team, then I think you can possibly justify dropping Focus Punch if you have some sort of other method of, really sticking it to Swampert. So Magneton Spikes teams are the very obvious example. I'm sure there are some more creative things you could do out there. I wonder if maybe it's not Magneton, but, obviously I say Hariyama because I love Hariyama, but it does Hariyama does act like a Magneton, so it makes sense. I'm sure there's others out there, but those are just what's coming to my mind. Maybe you can come up with something else. So that's why you might want to drop Focus Punch. And HP Bug, you really better have that Claydol situation on lock, but you don't necessarily have to be helpless against it, is a thing. So now we go to the other moves. So Double Edge, why are we using it? Well, like Double Edge on CB Arrow, it is both the strongest neutral attack you have, even out-damaging Rock Slide. Obviously, Focus Punch is stronger, but in a one-on-one situation, something you just attack and do 1 damage to you, and Rapid Spin will keep you from Focus Punching. So we're talking in a situation where you want to attack without being disrupted. So this Double Edge is going to be your strongest. Out-damaging EQ by 20 base power is no joke. The other thing is that the normal coverage is really, really good, because you're hitting waters. I mean, it's actually your strongest non-Focus Punch move against something like Swampert. You still hit Flygon really, really well. And you hit things like Claydol switching in, of course. And you don't, here's the really big thing. It's what you don't let it. Like, yes, you can EQ Swampert. You can HP Bug Claydol, sure. But those moves let in things like Zapdos and Salamence and Celebi that you otherwise wouldn't really want switching in. That's the thing with Double Edge, that you can Double Edge the Swampert and you will still not allow Zapdos or Salamence to pivot in, or Celebi. These things you really don't want pivoting in. And that is a really, 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 it cannot be understated. It's why Double Edge is, one of Arrow's most spammed moves. For those ambitious among you, you might be thinking, hey, what about dropping EQ? If you're just Focus Punching and spiking and beating down Metagross and Jirachi, I've thought about it, and there are some physical T-Tar sets, like the Sub-Punch sets, that can get around Metagross and Jirachi, but on EQ, I really wouldn't recommend it. You really, I made a video recently, I don't know if it was recently at this point, whatever you consider recently. Not all that long ago, I made a video about a team with 4 Choice Banders built by M Dragon, and I believe one of the games that he used it in showcased T-Tar checking Super Rachi, and Super Rachi can actually beat physical T-Tar, with a little bit of chip, because it survives EQ so handily, and being able to +1 your EQ immediately and threaten it back with an OHKO can be really, really big with how bang those guys play, those special offensive Pokemon, like the bulky Celebes that try to live HP Bugs. I mean, those are crazy. But Super Rachi trying to live the CB or the T-Tar EQ, or forcing a DD from it, let's say, which can be played around more, switch out, and then yeah, sometimes you don't have that luxury. Sometimes the Super Rachi can even be built bulky enough to live the Jolly DD-Tar EQ. So, yeah, having that immediate EQ without needing to DD is really, really, really nice. And just for, the neutral damage, like let's say Jirachi switches out and Suicune comes in, and you just smack it with a CB EQ. So the instant power is really big for keeping up with offense. And I mean, even something like rock sliding into Metagross, with a DD tar, it's like, oh man, now now you're in an ugly position. I'm not saying rock sliding into Metagross with a CB tar is good, but it's definitely a marked step up, because you are challenging, the less bulky Metagross a lot more. So more pressure more instantaneously without having to really predict as much. With DD tar can be a very delicate dance, and here you have the ability to just spam much more easily. And EQ is almost as necessary as Rock Slide, so I don't think EQ is negotiable, unfortunately. If someone wants to make an argument for it, then go for it. But yeah, so Double Edge, the neutral coverage is just incredible. And yeah, we won't go over that again, but just look at the targets of the physical. Obviously, Skarmory is not something you want to be thudding into, but again, we're talking about Magneton removing Skarmory or Hariyama, whatever. But most of the time, it's going to be Magneton, right? So we're talking about Magneton removing Skarmory, so you don't have to Focus Punch. Oh, then what are you using instead? Double Edge. You're still smacking Swampert very reliably, I might add, harder than EQ. And with Spikes, it's really just devastating. And you still have Double Edge as your anti-Flygon move, also much less risky. Your Double Edge is your anti-Flygon move, and this is a move that's hitting all the ground, so it's hitting Claydol as well, really, really well. And not giving entry to Pokemon you don't want to be giving entry to, like Zapdos and Mence and Celebi. So, yeah, incredible. You might say, okay, what about the Recoil? Why do I want to use Return? Well, I mean, you could. I wouldn't, but, but the thing is, CB Tar is not a Pokemon built to last most of the time. There are exceptions. Coming to mind is a team that I highlighted in the Part 1 of Advanced History, Part 2 coming soon, by the way. Built by Seymour, I think, which is this team that was meant to go the distance, and with Leech Seed and Wish and Rapid Spin, it was meant to facilitate CB Tar to just barrage the opponent over and over and over and over again. So I'm not saying that you can't do that necessarily, but with the susceptibility to Dugtrio, you can't. There are going to be some matchups, even if you have a team like that, with your Wish Blissey and your Hazard Clearing, whatever. There still are going to be some matchups where you just know once you get that KO with CB Tar, you are going to get Dugtrio'd for your trouble. You have to make it worth it. And no amount of bulk this is why you can bulk out your CB Tar. Again, not what this video is about. But you can bulk out your CB Tar and you can play cautiously, but fact of the matter is you are most of the time going to take some chip and Dugtrio is going to revenge kill you. So with that in mind, if it's not Dugtrio, it's something else. It's another threat that you can't switch into. And you have to just, cut your losses after you have dished out significant, hefty damage. So, with this in mind, you are going to have to play your CB Tar aggressively, and that means sometimes, yeah, you are going to take some recoil. You don't have Rock Head like Arrow. You are going to lose some health, and I mean, yeah, that's going to happen, but it is absolutely worth it. That's the whole idea. So. And also, in some cases, you have the very unique advanced mechanic of using a recoil in order to end the turn. And what I mean by this is there is the mechanic in advance, and the first 3 generations, actually. But in advance, the turn is over the second a Pokemon is declared fainted on the turn. So this is most commonly seen with Explosion. If you have something like a Gengar Explosion, it might bounce off defensive Suicune, but the reason you use it is not to do a lot of damage, but because as soon as Gengar faints from using Explosion, the turn is over. Suicune cannot move. What this means is Suicune cannot rest. And the exact same thing applies to Recoil from Double Edge, so you see where I'm going with this. The CB Tar can just sacrifice itself doing massive, massive damage to something like a Suicune, and not only are you chunking it really, really, really hard, but you are also preventing its rest. So you can do that all sorts of situations. Ending the turn is good. It's not just about preventing rest from Suicune, although incidentally, this is why fast CB Tar is really good. You put a lot more pressure on defensive Suicune this way, and Milotic for that matter. So yeah, you can do all sorts of stuff. You can double edge and deny the Milotic gets recover, all that, and more non-recovery options. But those are the ones that generally come to mind. That's how they're generally used. So that's double edge, and how you can use it. And Brick Break. So Brick Break is again about the neutral coverage, because we have established through the Focus Punch idea that Brick Break is about CB Tar is a very good user of fighting moves, because we know that fighting resists generally don't switch into it, Claydol notwithstanding. So, with this in mind, Brick Break is a much safer alternative to Focus Punch. Oh, and it breaks dual screens, although that's not going to come up often. But hey, it's nice in case Reflect Magneton is really ruining your day or something. But yeah, I have to say, of the moves to drop, Focus Punch seems the more appealing option to drop to me, just because there are going to be situations where you can't use it as much because the opponent, is aware of the threat of CB Focus Punch and will attack you more, and you want to have more options that you can throw at the opponent immediately without the prediction reliance of Focus Punch. So the more immediate threat you have, obviously you have to really compensate for that scar and pert thing. I can't emphasize how big that is, but with the right team, then you can do anything. So yeah, Brick Break is just a safer Focus Punch. And, even something like the way that it hits Scar and Pert, it's not doing Focus Punch damage, but it's doing pretty decent damage. Brick Break is used on CB Metagross for similar purposes. And, the nice thing is that you OHKO Max HP T-Tar. Max HP T-Tar will always live EQ from CB Tar, but it will never live Brick Break, so that's really nice. And another major dynamic, which is kind of emblematic of fighting type, or the fighting type in Advance as a whole, is the one-on-one against Blissey. Because you see this a lot with Blissey against like standard lefties Focus Punch Tars, and this is incidentally why sub T-Tar is so good to punish those. But even against the CB Tar once in a while, they'll say, you know what, I don't want to get Focus Punch on the switch, I'm going to see what they lock into, I'm just going to stand in Seismic Toss. If I take a Rock Slide, it'll be a big hit, yes, that'll be sad, but I can heal because I take 0 damage from Zapdos. And, or just in a situation where they're like, you know what, the Focus Punch is coming and I must disrupt it. I cannot let my Swampert get Focus Punch. Whatever it is, in those situations, you really love having this move, which safely destroys Blissey staying in and will still hit the Swampert switching in. And again, spikes really help here because, you don't do as much damage to Swampert immediately as EQ or, especially Double Edge, let alone Focus Punch, but spikes do a lot of the heavy lifting. If you're comfortable rock sliding into Pert because of spikes, then you're definitely comfortable brick breaking. So yeah, that one-on-one against Blissey can't be overstated. There's a similar dynamic against Snorlax. You're going to be able to pick it off. Like if you have a Boomlax that's going to stay in and just blow up because you don't want to sustain damage on anything else. It's like, oh, I live a Rock Slide and I don't want it to Focus Punch, so I'm going to stay in. And you just Brick Break and drop it from huge ranges. So that's another really, really, really nice aspect to Brick Break. Those are the big ones, I think. But yeah, the neutral coverage is just, even hitting something like Skarmory and Flygon in the same breath is wonderful. Or Metagross, Jirachi, all these Pokemon that are used to pivot around CB-Tar's normal moves, or T-Tar's normal moves, I guess. And you are just putting a little bit of pressure on them. And it's better than just, thudding with Rock Slide. Yes, Rock Slide is going to be good with Brick Break. It's little details and it's little percentages as well. So that's basically it. I don't know what else you could make an argument for in CB Tar. And again, the best arrangement for these is generally going to be, team dependent. I had one team where I was running Double Edge and Brick Break, and I really liked it. But I did find myself missing HP Bug, so I think it's generally going to be one or the other. If you're going to deviate from the standard of Focus Punch HP Bug, you're generally going to go with the Double Edge or Brick Break. Of the two, I think I generally prefer Double Edge just because of the coverage and the raw power. That you can't really underestimate because you think, oh yeah, CB Tar hits hard, but it's the Focus Punch and the Rock Slide, right? But those each come with their drawbacks. Focus Punch obviously being Focus Punch, the inherent risk to it, and Rock Slide being its stab, aka inviting the resist that switch into T-Tar. And with Double Edge, you have a move that is stronger than your stab and has much better coverage against most of the Pokemon that are switching into you. So I am generally a big Double Edge fan. But there is really something to be said for the upsides of Brick Break as well, which is why, when I was first testing this stuff out, I just crammed both of them together. It's like, let me try both of these. I would be more discerning, if bring it to a serious tournament. But the Brick Break, the cold OHKO on other Tars, even those designed to live the big EQ, the Blissey, not just Blissey, but Blissey plus teammate dynamic. Hitting all of Blissey, Skarm, and Pert in the same move, that's really nice. Safely hitting all of them in the same move, I should say. Because, Focus Punch does that too with, big damage, but Blissey stays in his Seismic Tosses and suddenly the matchup is just completely stupid. It's like, Blissey forced out my CB Tar, really? Brick Break you make them look so stupid for even trying it. And the Snorlax thing is really nice as well, because you will see this often. You know, Zapdos has chunked the Snorlax with a T-Bolt or two, and you get the T-Tar in on the double, and they're like, you know what, I'm not risking my Metagross against this, or my Swampert, whatever. I'm just going to take the T-Tar with me. I'm going to trade Snorlax, and then it's not a trade because you just dropped it. So, yeah, that's basically it. Thank you guys for watching or listening, because this video really had very little in the way, nothing pretty much in the way of a visual element. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed, and let me know what you think, and I will see you in the next one.